Hi, I'm Heinbach. Good to have you back. This is the December Patreon Q&A, where I answer questions that are sent in to me via the good people that support what I do on Patreon. And let's start right away. Alexander Einoder has 4 questions, but he subdivides them differently. 1a. Have you ever listened to Clipping, 2 noise artists with an incredible rapper? I actually have. I think 2 years ago or was it 3 years ago, when their last album came out, and I really enjoyed that. It was pretty cool stuff. 1b. Have you ever considered doing collaborations with hip-hop artists? Some of the test equipment seems like it's made for hip-hop. Why not? I mean, I like the energy of this industrial kind of hip-hop, and one of my favorite acts when I played at Up to Date Festival, I think they were called Prison Slave, was this UK grime hardcore rap duo, and I just loved it. It had all the energy that I enjoy from punk and industrial, and with the power of a voice to that was really, really good. So yeah, I probably would be up for that. I did do some work for hip-hop artists, for major label hip-hop artists, where they brought me in for stuff where there is no preset, like really beautifully tuned modular and tape stuff. So where the artist especially requested don't use Omnisphere or any other of that preset stuff. 2, not really a question, but you should make some playlists on Spotify for your go-to artists in different genres or moods or whatever. I could do that if I have time. I mean, there's one that I did for iHeart Noise, which is sort of like an influences and stuff that excites me playlist, and you can check that out. I'll link it in the description. That's pretty fun, and I think I could do some more of these. 3, have you ever tried getting that subsonic frequency that makes you shit yourself? I think that's a myth. There is no brown note or brown frequency, as funny as that would be. But I do know that my acoustic professor talked about how the way our organs are hung up inside our body, and that with certain frequencies you can do, he wasn't precise, but you can do bad stuff to those organs simply because they start resonating and the way they're hung inside the body. And that kind of scared me, but I didn't follow up on that because I'm not using music as a weapon. And in fact, I don't even like when the talk of music gets militarized, like I pulled the trigger on the synthesizer, or this is a new weapon in your arsenal, and stuff like that. I don't like that kind of language for music or music instruments. Lloyd Barrett. In your last video, you mentioned working with hardware and getting away from the computer. I'm wondering to what degree you still use software to track, mix, and master your work. How far can we actually get away from the computer? I use Ableton Live to track in the end. So most of my music is first recorded. So I mix analog when I'm in the studio on an analog mixer, and that gets recorded to 2-track. But then it goes right after into the Ableton Live for editing and all this stuff, all the fine-tuning and denoising. So I use isotope plugins, as I mentioned before, to denoise it a bit. Or when I'm on the road, I use this Sony recorder I have here, tracking my voice now to record. And I also use the DAW, especially for my theater work, where it's more complex, where I have to bring in and out tracks, or when I have to cut up vocals, cut up texts. I use that a lot. It's very important still, and that's why I made that MacBook Pro video, because it is an important tool. I just like it to be invisible. I just like it to work. I'm not at all fetishizing it. I spend tons of time with it because I keep editing and making these videos. But for the musical process, it's a tool that's good to use, and you shouldn't discard. It's nice to not have to rely on it too much, especially if you got a job that already requires you to spend a lot of time in front of the computer. So, which is something that I see with many people, that sitting down with a computer then after a whole day can be a bit of a drain. But in general, how far can we actually get away from the computer? I mean, if you wanted to, you could get a tape duplicator and just record direct to tape. Record your mix to a master tape and then just copy, 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 and distribute it that way. Stay all the way analog, analog, analog. Theoretically, I think it's possible to do a complete analog workflow and analog distribution, and you needed to get the word out in some way so people can know it, but it would be a fun experiment to try to keep everything analog. From the recording, from the music making process, to the recording, to the mixing, to the distribution. And maybe I'll try something like that. Could be an idea. Jeremy Colonnay. Last year you posted a track with a 4-mesh spherical wavetable Navigator and mentioned on Reddit that you would do a video soon. I found that video. Did you make it? But you didn't find that video because I never made it. I made 4MS contacted me and they wanted to have some videos of artists when the 4MS Wavetable Navigator would be launching. And they asked me in exchange for the unit to make some sounds and go through the whole beta testing phase. And yeah, I think I made 8 tracks with it, and I sent them all the videos, and I think I only released 1 or 2 of them on my own channel, and the rest basically for them to use. I don't even know what they did with them, or if they posted them, or if they used them in some other way. But it was interesting, because I combined it with my Seat Lombardi gear, and the whole thing, because it was a beta test also, almost every firmware broke all the presets that I made, which was kind of a pain, because with the 4MS Wavetable Navigator, every preset is its own composition. And losing those hurt. But at least I usually had recorded the sounds. And I still have the prototype version. They wanted to send me an updated version, but never did get around to that. But I'm fine with that. Oftentimes I find that prototypes have something more interesting to them. They're usually more extreme. You can go to further ranges, even though they might be a bit more fragile, but there is something to be said for prototypes. And I have, for example, the DroloFX Stretch Viewer, and that's a prototype version. It's a little banged up, which is cool, but the nice thing is I can like exchange the firmware, and I got some new firmware from DroloFX that he made basically just for me to try out, and it was lovely and cool to use that. That's not possible on the regular version because there are no socketed chips in there. So, yeah, I love prototypes. And can you talk about your experience with the development of the module and your overall opinion? I love the Wavetable Navigator. It's a beautiful, beautiful module with a whole lot of depth. And I sold my morphing terrarium from Synthesis Technology for it, which is a beautiful and great sounding wavetable module, but after the 4MS I didn't need it. The 4MS you can just pack in its own pod and it can be a standalone synthesizer, and that's also why I love it. I can just lug it along. I played it live in Canada and other places. It's really an instrument in its own right. And of course, as with all modular stuff, it shines when you put it in context with other modules and modulate the hell out of it. But still, this is definitely one of the coolest and most advanced modules that I know. And it's fun to see how far modular has come. And that's one of the modules that shows that to me. And the power of digital and modular is, for example, why I also stay with Eurorack, because Eurorack has all these great digital modules. And those are fun and exciting. And I'm kind of thinking of selling all the analog stuff, because I've got that better in the test equipment, and I hopefully search, which I hope to buy soon. And yeah, keep the Eurorack for the digital stuff where it absolutely excels. A video on the SWN would still be great. I'm probably not gonna get around to it, but I wanted to do a general modular or state of my Eurorack modular video anyway, so I might be able to and there it is in my Eurorack case. So I will be talking a bit about that once I get to do that video. But right now I've got so many ideas and so much fun ideas for videos, and so many I still need to edit. So we'll see when that happens. Lars Jäderlund. When finish recording a track, to what degree do you mix and master yourself before releasing, or do you just trust external engineers for that? I mix everything myself, absolutely. But mastering I prefer to let someone else do, because I think mastering is a very technical process. It's not a magical process. It's a process where you basically use your knowledge of all kinds of how stuff is supposed to sound and then apply that to a mix. It's a very technical process for me. It's not like you're doing art on the master. It's making everything sound better. And therefore, a second set of ears, so another mastering engineer, is worth gold. Because else you're only listening to the music in your own space and your own home. And that has definitely its own characteristics. And it's not like every place sounds the same. But I have to say, with some stuff that I do, mastering is pretty important, like stuff that I recorded on the road and I only had headphones to use. So there the mastering kicks in very well. Some stuff, it's not that big of a difference, I think, because I've set up my studio in a way that everything that I record already has a sound to it. And that's due to the interplay of the components, because I'm using a certain bus configuration. I'm using a bus compressor, I'm using a vitalizer, an old one, and I record to tape, and that is tuned specially. So everything already comes out rather even due to the whole process that I mix in. And because it's an analog mix, it already has a lot of depth and width and all that stuff that you desire when you make a mix. And the mastering there is usually just a touch. So yeah, it's still something that I always like to give to someone who's a pro. And it's not magic, it's just a technical process. And you give it to a professional who does something nice, or maybe leaves it all alone, or just makes informed decisions on what to do and what not to do. Oh, I also learned so much on mastering when I watched one of the greatest in Germany, Chris von Rautenkranz, and he mastered the album of my band back then. He would smoke incessantly, drink one espresso after the other, and just make tiny adjustments on the mix using tiny boosts and cuts of equalizer, and then some MS processing, and really brought the mixes a bit more to life. It just sounded a touch better. It sounded a touch more balanced, but it took no more than 15 to 20 minutes per track, because it was already professionally mixed. But just this okay, machen, yes, make it so. Whole process was fascinating to me, and I was happy to be able to sit in that session and just by watching and listening learn. This is this was one of the best lessons in mastering that I got, just watching Chris von Rautenkranz do a master of a record where I was involved in. Sky Voyager. Any advice on how to find commission or scoring work as a new artist? Before you gained internet notoriety, how did you find sound, music, work? Thanks. Hang out with students. I got all my contacts back in the time when I was at university studying. And there I met students who were students of theater in that regard. And I worked in the free theater group. I did off theater. And then I got to know those students and we started working together. And one of those, she actually made it and we've been working together for a long time. But you need to like spread yourself out there. You need to work with so many people because you never know in all this film and theater and media and art business, you never know who's actually going to be the person that can make this into their job, and a job like in the class that can support a musician, like a paid musician for that. So spread yourself as far as you can when you're young and you've got time, and do as much work as you can. Try always to get paid, because then you'll also be more respected, because else you lose respect. And of course, that's the worst thing. So getting paid is important, just to be respected and of course to live. But yeah, try to get some form of get something back for what you're doing, and just work with as many people as you can. That's the best way. And even though I've gotten some notoriety, still is like most of the work is still from those old connections that I made back when I was 21, 23, 24. And so it's really important to put yourself out into the scene and work directly with people. That's the way it worked for me best. How much time do you dedicate to learning using a piece of hardware, software, or gear before you decide? This is not for me. I remember you talking about a piece of test equipment you couldn't get to music until you put it away and then brought it out sometime later. Is it a matter of this piece of hardware, gear, software isn't working right now and I will keep it? Or is it this isn't for me, out the door with it? It's both. With some things I feel I just don't know it enough. I mean, I've got an Electron A4 sitting at home, and that's an absolutely cool piece. And I tried it out for 2 or 3 hours, and I think, even though I know the digitone and I know the digitakt, this is still a learning curve for me, and I'm not willing to let it go. I wanted to keep it for a bit longer and use it a bit more and see if I can get into the mindset, and I want to discover it more. Then there's test equipment that I know, I think I'm just not at the level yet where I understand what it can do, and I think I found a place later where I can use it. And then there are modules that I know it's the same thing. I need to learn more, but at some point I start just kicking out stuff if it's not getting used. Like, I need to have a certain archive of stuff for my scoring work, but not the instruments that I play all the time. So I keep selling everything that is collecting dust and I know won't be used. Then there's stuff that's new and I play and it just doesn't inspire me. It's just like, okay, this was definitely a wrong purchase. A piece of gear needs to give me some sort of gratification or some sort of, this is interesting. There needs to be some hook immediately. It can be the sound, or it can be a unique function. It can be something that I find playful with it. But there has to be this little hook, and then I know, okay, I want to spend more time with that. But for some things, I just know I don't have the time. I mean, I tried so much to get into stuff like sampling groove boxes, like the Zoom ST224. Sold that to my buddy Jogging House. Then the Digitakt, I sold that too, because I realized I'm not a groovebox guy. As much as I love watching Rhythm Roulette and seeing all the people hack on their MPCs, I'm not that person. I like to have like a continuous sound already present and then shape that, instead of having to build it up like Legos. So I like Legos, but not in music so much. I found out for myself what works for me in general and what doesn't. And what doesn't really work is menu diving, especially if it's not labeled. Like, I love the Morphogene, but god damn it, I forget the functions every time. So I need to keep the menu close with me. And it's super cool once I use it again, But if it wasn't such a good sounding module with so many fun capabilities, I would have not kept it because of the menu diving, and especially because I forget it all the time. But it has that quality that makes me keep it. In regards to how much time, I think I really make the decision in the first 2 hours whether something is for me or not. And I mean, you see me exploring all these things. You see basically the whole process just cut down from 2 hours to like 5 minutes or something, or 10 minutes. But I really decide pretty quickly if something is for me or if it's not, unless, as with the Morphogene, I get that hook. And then I'm hooked for a longer time and I want to explore it more. Liam Freiwald. What's your general approach for sound design? I've always wondered how you managed to make every beginning as a sequel happen, with one synth and a string of specific effects to create such a wonderful widescreen effect, and made me wonder how you figure out what pedals or effects or musical pieces of gear you use to get these sounds you're looking for. Is there a process, or is it trial and error, or perhaps a bit of both? In general, I have effects change that I know and love. And in this particular track, it's the Coma Field Kit as a mixer and as an equalizer. Then there's the AMA, which is by AC Noises, which is a reverb and a bit crusher, which is a fun combination. And then there's the Count to 5 by Montreal Assembly, and Strymon Timeline, and the Janus, which is a fuzz by Varus Audio that can be controlled via joysticks. And I run the Hive Touch synth into that chain. I knew in advance that if I used that chain of effects, because I tried and used it a lot before, the Hive Touch synth would sound so big and beautiful. Because basically, what am I doing? I've got a filter with a nice overdrive in the field kit. That's cool to have. And it's like a tilt equalizer, so you can go high and low. It's really, really helpful for making space in the mix and making something sound different. Then the AMA gives you space, and then you can crush that space, so that's interesting. And then you get a harmonizer, because that's all I use the Count to 5 for, as a little harmonizer that sounds interesting. It reminds me of the very old Eventide stuff. And then the Janus is just such a lovely thing to play with the fuzz and the tremolo. It adds a bit more movement to the tremolo, and then you can really fine-tune the fuzz, which is, again, distortion. And distortion is a nice tool for making things wide. And then the Strymon Timeline, which just has a Hollywood sound to it. It's a very noticeable effect for me. I really know how it sounds now, and it has a widescreen quality to it. So in this particular case, I just knew what the effects would do. And for example, an harmonizer is something that I plan in and I play with as I would an instrument. And I play all the effects like instruments, because I think I said it before, but they are part of the acoustic body of an electronic signal. And the Hive Touch synth sounds nice, but also very clean. It has a very accordion, pure accordion kind of sound to it. And I just wanted to mess with that and make it more alive and beautiful. And that is why this particular chain of effects is employed. And generally, I put together setups that I think will have synergy. So, for example, right now I've got a little setup upstairs where I thought, oh, this might work, this might work. Then I realized I don't have the cables, so I had to switch a bit. And that made it more exciting, because now I could filter different stuff differently. And it's a case of finding synergies between things. It's a case of finding synergies between these instruments, and that's something that happens in advance, and then I take stuff in or out or move it around in the setups. But oftentimes I really like to just focus on a simple, small desktop setup, especially when I'm traveling. I think that's all. So thank you all for your questions. If you want to be part of these, you can just join my Patreon, any tier, and I'll be sticking a Q&A thread for every month now, and then you can just ask your questions there. and I'll be answering them as good as I can in these videos. So thank you all for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye.